Securing your data privacy is more important than ever. Start your free privacy scan and see how much of your data is being sold on the internet. Offering data breach monitoring, bulk data removal, and agency protection, DataSeal.io is the best and most affordable way to secure your data from ending up in the wrong hands. Remove your data today from the internet with DataSeal.io. That's DataSeal.io.
This, my life was on fire. I was walking out of hell.
Shia LaBeouf is opening up about his spiritual journey. The 36-year-old actor sat down with Bishop Robert Barron for his Word on Fire YouTube series, and Shia got candid about how a dark time in his life led him to re-examine his faith.
It wasn't like I willingly came in here on a white horse singing show tunes. I came in here on fire, and I didn't want to be an actor anymore. And my life was a mess, complete mess. And I had hurt a lot of people. And I felt deep shame and deep guilt. I didn't like to go outside much. I had a yearning not be here anymore. I was on my way out.
The Transformers alum went on to recall how he was contemplating suicide during this difficult part of his life.
I had a gun on the table. I was out of here. I didn't want to be alive anymore when all of this happened, okay? Shame like I had never experienced before. Kind of shame, you forget how to breathe. You don't know where to go. You can't go outside to get like a taco. Like you don't want to go anywhere.
And that's where you are when you're up there reading the gospel and thinking about playing Padre Pio. You're in that state.
Yes, but I'm also in this deep desire to hold on.
Yeah.
At the time, Shia had just accepted to play the role of Padre Pio in the upcoming biopic about the Italian Franciscan Capuchin friar. In preparation for the part, the actor stayed at a monastery and started researching Catholicism. Shia began reading the gospel, and he shared his feelings and what it meant for him.
So I read the gospel with this man, Jude, and I keep hearing in many different variations of it. I'm not gonna explain the whole gospel here, nor do I need to, it's you. But I keep hearing let go. Mm-hmm. And to a person who's been gripping so tight for so long, it feels like, it just feels like, it just feels like the right move to let go, like complete surrender for real. And it stops being this prep of a movie, and it starts being something that feels beyond all that.
The Honey Boy actor concluded his thoughts about getting back into faith by sharing that it was more than just getting back into acting and making his career great again.
I know now, my God was using my ego to draw me to Him, was drawing me away from worldly desires. It was all happening simultaneously, but there would have been no impetus for me to get in the car and drive up here if I didn't think, I'm gonna save my career.
Shia also told Bishop Barron that he's really appreciative to have found a sense of camaraderie in studying Catholicism that's allowed him to reconcile with his own past. Abel Ferrara's film Padre Pio, which is starring Shia, is set to hit theaters on September 9th.
We have to be ready, and in some cases, it's not going to be nice. The fight's coming to you on a whole different level. They're loaded for bear. Joe Resinello.
Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always.
They're not going to take this lying down.
On the Crusade Channel, always on air, and always online at crusadechannel.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, oh man, are we going into the breach on the Crusade Channel.
Welcome back, everybody, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. We always encourage everyone, go to crusadechannel.com, look under the hood, kick the tires. You're going to like what you see, and we encourage you to subscribe to the Crusade Channel. Mike Church runs a top-notch organization there. You get a lot of information, a lot of commentary, so you're definitely going to love it. Joe and I are eternally grateful to the King Dude for letting us, for giving us a platform on the Crusade channel. So Joe, we got a lot of buzz right off the bat. Our friend Alan's here. Alan has been on our show a couple of times. So Alan up in Canada, Caroline's here, Laura, we got John, Buck, Willie. So here's the thing, Joe Resinello, we're going to start with Shia LaBeouf because I am moved, Joe, and I'm going to, in the course of the conversation, I'm going to tell you why particularly. I'm moved by his conversion. I think obviously all conversions, including yours, including mine, including everybody's, there's more joy in heaven when one sinner repents. And Shia LaBeouf, Joe, not for nothing. We played the clip from the interview with Bishop Robert Barron. The dude's on fire. There's no question about it. And we're going to talk about that. I think Jessica Kramer in Crisis Magazine wrote a really good article on that. I just want to mention one thing, Joe, and I'm going to hand it over to you, and we'll start to talk about that later on in the conversation. We have to talk about the speech from hell. And I got to say, Joe Resinello, viscerally, when you look at it, it looks like the speech from hell, Joe Biden's speech the other night. Joe, either he's got some really bad theatrical people, okay, or they're really telling you, look, guys, we're from hell, and we're here to stay, and we're right in your face. Either way, we got to break that down. But Buck in the chat room, he made a good point. And Joe, I'm going to hand it over to you. Buck says, I just hope the folks leave Shia alone and allow him to make his Catholic journey in peace. Allow him to make reparation for his past. Please, God. I think that's the most important thing, Joe Resinello, is that when somebody converts, now he did his interview, and I think it's a strong interview. I think it's going to influence a lot of people. Now we got to leave the guy alone a little bit, okay? Again, let's how should we say this, Joe? Let's grab the fruits of his conversion. That's what we're going to talk about. But I say, like Buck said, leave the guy alone and let him now see where he's at and grow from there. Joe Resinello at the front line with Joe and Joe. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, I did see the whole interview. And there's a couple things I want to bring out. The first thing that immediately jumped out at me was the state that he was in. Now, he was a mess, and he says it. He said he was on the brink of suicide. And what came to me in that is God reached a hand to him. It just shows you God's personal love for us. Like, he reached a hand to this man who was basically going to kill himself, and he took his hand back. That says something. It reminded me of a story. Today is the feast day of Mother Teresa, and it reminded me of a story of basically a child on the street in India. Basically, children in the third world that live on the street, they are the poorest of the poor. No one looks at them. I hate to say it. It's almost like if you've ever been to the third world and seen children barefoot, I've seen naked children on the street in Cambodia and Haiti. It's mind-blowing. And Mother Teresa told a story that this child, which they took off the street, was sick. And she, or I don't remember if it was a she or a he, but we'll say it was a he, needed a specific medicine. They didn't have it. And a shipment of medicine came in, right on top of the medicine was the medicine that child needed to live. And she said, that's how God's personal love works. Like, no one cared about that child, but God did. And that's what jumped out at me when I saw this video. God cared about him. Didn't care that he was like living, not the greatest of lives. Didn't care about his politics. Didn't care about his past. He cared about him and he loved him. And that's what we have to do. That doesn't mean you compromise yourself. That doesn't mean you lower your standards. But what it does mean is you have to love people. And you have to. I'm going to be honest with you. That is a vital, vital aspect of following Christ. And if you're not doing that, I'm going to be honest with you, you're not doing anything.
Joe Resinello, I want to piggyback off that. Joe, I already know this conversation is just going to go like a pinball. Okay, we're going to be bouncing off each other like a pinball, on the bumpers and everything else. So I'm just going to pick up on what you just said. God doesn't care about your politics. We need to get that through our heads in this country, Joe. You got a lot of people around there. I believe in Jesus. I believe in Jesus. Okay, and then they're misguided too. They think they're on the straight path to heaven, Joe. And let me tell you something. I know I don't need to tell you this. All right. The essence of humility is to know. I think it was Saint Joe. You could correct me wrong because you know, or you could correct me better. Saint Francis thought he was going to hell up until 2 weeks before he died. Okay. In other words, he didn't think himself worthy of going to heaven. Okay. There's a lot of people, Joe. We look at a Shia LaBeouf and we say, "Oh, thank God he converted. Now he'll be going to heaven like I am." Dude, watch your own soul. Don't judge this guy. Okay. Like, and again, you know where I'm going with that, Joe? It's like some people think in their minds, oh, well, he was a stone cold leftist. He did some crazy things. Thank God God found him and changed his politics. No, God didn't change his politics. God changed his heart. God changed his soul. And people who think that way, Joe, they think, well, I think the right way. I believe in the right things as an American. Therefore, I'm going to heaven. You're just as lost as Shia LaBeouf if you think your politics is going to save you. And again, Joe, I'm not saying that politics is not important. Don't get me wrong, okay? But people in America seem to place so much of an emphasis on it. Some people, dare I say, Joe, I don't want to sound judgmental. I think a lot of people would be judgmental towards Shia LaBeouf. Kind of to say, well, thank God he repented. He had one foot in hell and the other on a banana peel. Not like me type thing. You know where I'm going with that?
No, I hear you. I mean, people like to compare themselves to somebody who doesn't have their act together. You know, compare yourself to Christ. Compare yourself to, a saint. And very soon you start to see, you're not standing too tall. But another thing I want to bring out in this, which I think is very important, is Christ was the greatest revolutionary that ever walked the earth. He went against the grain of society. Many times, God, Jesus, chooses people like Shia, because Shia was like a rebel. And
Shia.
to be,
I think you mean Shia.
Shia, how do you Shia? I don't even know.
No, Shia, S-H-I-A.
Shia. I mean, Shia was like a rebel even in his field. He didn't walk along like the path of like what a lot of Hollywood people, to be honest with you, he was kind of rejected. That's kind of what happened, which brought him to this state. God uses people like that. Saint Francis was a rebel. Saint Paul was a rebel. John the Baptist was a rebel. You can't follow Jesus Christ. You can't be, to be honest with you, a disciple of Jesus and be like everybody else. You have to rebel. Meaning, and don't misunderstand me. You have to obviously follow the tenets of truth and the faith, because that's just what God calls us to do. But you can't be like everyone else in the world. And I think many times God chooses people just like this man. And I'll tell you, when I watched this interview, Joe, this is what I thought to myself. I hope he perseveres, because to be honest with you, conversion is an everyday occurrence for everybody. You have to continue. You have to have a prayer life.
Well, let's go with that.
But what I was just going to say is this: if he does, I actually think he's a chosen man. Honest to God, I think God. Please.
I want to throw this out there again. I mean, I picked up when I heard years ago that Father Benedict Rochelle prayed for Madonna every day. Okay. He prayed for the conversion of her soul and her reversion to the Catholic Church. Okay. That's something that moved me. I remember hearing that. I don't know. It's over 10 years ago. It was in my journey. Okay. I'm so happy about this. I'm saying from a personal point of view. And we all of us, those out there listening to us at the Crusade channel, you, me, our wives, we pray for the conversion of all people. But I specifically pray for a certain set of entertainers, okay? I was not praying for Shia LaBeouf, but obviously he's included in that. When I'm praying for, I picked up on Father Rochelle, so I pray for Madonna, I pray for Lady Gaga, I pray for others by name, okay? Along with praying for the people's conversion. This is an answered prayer, Joe, and I'm with you on this. I think this man is a chosen. I think he is.
I think so. Honest to God.
He's a badass. I don't like him. I'm not going to lie. I'll say that right here at the front line with Joe and Joe. I hated Shia LaBeouf. Okay. This news took me like blindsided me. I was like, excuse me, what? I heard he was playing Padre Pio. And we're not going to get into the movie too much because Abel Ferrara, who directed it, has been known to be a little off. Okay, let's put it like that. Okay, so I'm not going to put so much trust in the movie. I'll see it when it comes out. Okay, I'm not going to put so much trust in the movie. I'll see it with an open mind. But I think Shia LaBeouf's conversion is obviously independent of him playing Padre Pio. I think it has to do with him hanging around a bunch of Franciscans, is what I think. And then now remember, this dude is a rebel. Okay, he's not well liked in Hollywood too. As a conservative Catholic, I didn't like him. I'm like, look at this guy. All right, his antics, his lifestyle, he's very harsh. You don't want to listen to him. And sometimes, dare I say it, I don't mean this literally, because sometimes you want to slap him in the face. Okay. This dude is chosen, Joe, because guess what? I saw parts of the interview. I didn't see the whole thing, okay? He's sincere. And I agree with you. Now, one thing I will tell you is this. I'm going to hand it back to you. You mentioned perseverance, okay? He's already talking about he finds an immediate connection to the Latin Mass. He's talking about the need. I think he used the word need. I could be wrong, but I felt he was saying need for the rosary, okay? The Eucharist, okay? God's going to do the rest with him, Joe. He's already on the path of not coming into the Catholic Church. Oh, it sounds good. I want to be a Catholic. No, he's diving into the Mass. He's diving into the sacraments. He's diving into the whole thing. He's going to be just fine because the grace that he gets, and he's going to become a very dangerous person to the enemies of the church because he's passionate. He's very, very passionate.
You know, when you follow Christ, you have there's almost a reckless abandonment that you must have. And he says this in the interview, and this is the clip that John, our producer, basically played in the beginning of the show. He said, a need to surrender. You see, that's a key to being a disciple of Christ. You have to surrender your will to the best of your ability. We all fail. We all struggle. We all sin. I get it. But to the point of saying, if you really want to follow Jesus, like to be a Christian, to be a Catholic makes no sense to the world. It makes no sense. Why would anyone have 8 kids in this day and age? Why? Like in terms of finances, in terms of risk, in terms of heartbreak. You can go on. I'm talking from a pure, like practical, write it down on a ledger. Why would you tithe? Why would you be kind to your enemies? I can go on and I can go on and I can go on. Why would you forgive people that hurt you? I can go on. It makes no sense to do that. But to be honest with you, in order to do that, you have to surrender your will. And to be honest with you, when you do that, you immediately make enemies. You immediately will make enemies in this world. And that's why, like I said, God calls rebels. You know, I was educated in high school. They were LaSalle Christian Brothers. And I remember running into this one brother in New York City. He knew my principal. And in high school, I wasn't a bad kid, meaning like I didn't go to jail, but I would get kicked out of class. I was voted the class clown. I would get kicked out of class a lot. You know, that type of thing. And I remember talking to brother and he said to me, Joe, it's always the kids that were bad that come back. The good kids never do. That's what he said. And I thought that was interesting because I think sometimes people who go along to get along, all they want to do is just achieve in this world. That's it. People, again, rebels, people who are willing to give up status, give up their good name, give up like prestige, give up comfort. That's who God calls. And God knows the heart. That's another thing I want to bring up. People sometimes look at the veneer of people. Look at the outside appearance of Mary Magdalene. Who would have looked twice at her? Look at the outside appearance of St. Matthew. Who would have looked at him? But Jesus did, because he knows the heart. He knows the heart. We don't look at people that way. But he does, and that's why he chooses certain people that shock you. And I think, again, when I saw this, Joe, I swear, I said, this dude if he perseveres, is going to do great things.
Well,
and I'm not just saying that. I mean it.
Well, no, I agree. Now, there's a couple of aspects of why, what would you call them, criteria that I'm sure from what we read in Scripture and everything else that God uses. Zeal has to be one of them. The zealousness of the individual, even if that zeal is directed against God. So he chooses St. Paul, okay? Nobody was more zealous than St. Paul. Zealous to the point that he killed and persecuted the early church, okay? And God chose him. Why? Because God knows everybody's going to look at this guy, Paul, and look and say, really? Really? This guy? This guy now believes in Jesus? This guy? This Paul is no Shia LaBeouf, or Shia LaBeouf is no Paul, I should say. Shia LaBeouf didn't kill people, okay, in the name of his anti-religion. Paul killed people, okay? He killed Saint Stephen, okay? If you want to think about it. Because God shocks, but more importantly, look, God doesn't exist in time and space. We all know that, but God operates, of course, in time and space because we exist in time and space. God knows we're influenced when there is a major conversion. God knew that there was going to be major conversions because if you could, somebody has to look at that, Joe. Even a non-believer at that time, let's say after the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ, had to look at that and say, if that guy converted, I'm going to have to do something about this. And re-examine what it is they believe. Because God will use Paul, a murderer, basically, a persecutor of the church, as an example. Now, again, Shia LaBeouf is not a murderer and is not a persecutor of the church. But certainly a guy like Shia LaBeouf is a guy who people will look at. Again, Dr. Bernard Nathanson comes to mind. Okay, we spoke about him on the show a million times. He converted to the Catholic Church. He was responsible for the murder of 60,000 human beings in the womb. It goes on and on. Joe, you'll never know. And I'm going to hand it over to you. You will never know the amount of people that converted to the Catholic Church because of the conversion of Dr. Bernard Nathanson. You probably will never know the amount of people that convert to the Catholic Church because of Shia LaBeouf. It's not our business to know. What it is our business to do is pray for him and others to be influenced by his conversion and also come into the church, okay, and help to build up the body of Christ on earth. But at the end of the day, Joe, there's no doubt in my mind, there's a bunch of his generation out there. Remember, he's about 20 years younger than us, 15 years younger than us. There's a bunch of his generation out there and younger who right now are saying to themselves, I think I might have to look into the Roman Catholic Church. And I think that that's a fair statement.
I want to also bring out another point, and you alluded to this in the very beginning of the discussion, how he basically was influenced by some very good Franciscans. And if you listen to the interview, he goes into this monastery. He mentions Jude in the clip that John mentioned. And then he basically has another Franciscan brother who kind of picks up where Jude left off, if my memory serves me correctly. And that brother actually traveled with him to Italy and is in the movie, actually. And why do I bring that up? Because I think not enough people see authentic Catholicism. And I'll tell you, that was something that influenced me. I mean, many people who've grown up Catholic, there's a lot of, and again, I don't want to point fingers, but there's a lot of very superficial Catholicism. And I am not interested in it. I'm going to be truthful with you. I'm simply like Christ isn't. He says, if you're lukewarm, I'll spit you out of my mouth. Jesus says that, but neither am I. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm all in or I'm out. I'm not interested. It does nothing for me. It doesn't move me like lukewarm Catholicism. Why I bring that up is he encountered authentic Catholicism. And I'm going to tell anyone who's listening to me right now, if you have not encountered authentic Catholicism, you haven't seen what Christ is all about. And if you have, it will stop traffic. Authentic Catholicism stops traffic. It stops traffic.
That's why I mentioned earlier, Joe Rossanello at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel. That's why I mentioned earlier, this is not again, it's so hard nowadays, Joe, not to sound judgmental when we're talking about these things. I'm talking about from our point of view. I don't want to judge anybody. I go to both the Novus Ordo and the Latin Mass. Okay, it depends on the. I go to both. I appreciate both. I have no problem with it. Okay, but this is not some sort of a wishy-washy conversion on the part of Shia LaBeouf. You don't start talking about the rosary when you've just come into the Catholic Church. You probably barely know the Hail Mary. You're talking about the need, Joe Resinello, to pray the rosary, the connection to the sacredness and the exclusivity of the Latin Mass, the traditional Latin Mass, okay? The dude gets it, and he's coming from the outside. He absolutely gets it. He gets the need for connection, the need for grace, that accompanies that connection that you have in praying the rosary, in the Eucharist, in the Mass in general. But he was talking about, I think, the reverence, but the TLM. I'm blown away, but this is not a wishy-washy conversion. This is not somebody, Joe Resinello, who's dabbling in the Catholic Church. He ain't dabbling. He's all in. He dove in head first. And I for one, Joe, I'm telling you, I'm very encouraged by this. I think that at this moment of time, when the current generation is going one way, the culture's going one way, this dude's got the stones, okay, to say I've converted to the Catholic Church.
That's why God called him, Joe.
That's what
I'm saying. Like, God calls people who are willing, like, to use a better, to have those stones. A lot of people like their little comfort. And to be truthful with you, to be a disciple of Christ, listen to the gospel. Listen to the gospel, what Christ says when you go to Mass. I mean, he's calling you into the deep. And a guy like this, to a degree, was in the deep, but it's just in a different direction. He just stopped short and turned around.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to bring up is no one is beyond redemption. No one is beyond redemption. I'm telling you this. People are very quick. I think of the prodigal son. It's so easy to write people off. Prayer and fasting. Think of Saint Monica for her son. She turned and her husband converted on his deathbed. Why did they do that? Because Monica was holy. I'm going to tell you this right now. When someone is holy, I mean like authentic lifestyle, like living and breathing Catholicism, not just knowing the rules, living and breathing Christ's love and mercy and truth to the world. When you encounter that, it stops traffic. It's like in the movie when, the Passion of the Christ, when he stabs Christ in the side and the blood and water pours on him, he's like frozen.
Yeah.
Like, that's what that's like. And you see, that's why Catholics hold the key to this country. They hold the key to this country as they did in Poland. When John Paul visited that nation and that country was gripped by communism, Catholics hold the key to this country because we have to shine that light to people.
Well,
and when we do, it will stop traffic and you'll see more conversions.
I agree. But one thing I'm liking here, and again, we are praying, okay, but so Nelly in the chat room here at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. She said, let's pray for Jordan Peterson. Now, here's another guy. Okay, we're not going to get into the whole thing about Jordan Peterson, but here's another thing about Jordan Peterson. He's making statements like, it doesn't get any more sane than Catholicism. Like, he said that. He actually made that statement. It doesn't get any more sane than the Catholic Church. Okay, he looks like he's on a progression. Again, Joe, you and I might have converted, God willing, we converted 1 or 2 or 3 people. Maybe listening to our voice, talking the way we do. God obviously has chosen us to do a thing, whatever that thing might be. We feel like it's to do this show, okay? And God, through his grace, we hope that people will convert. I pray for that also every day when I pray the rosary. All who hear us at the front line with Joe and Joe convert or revert to the Catholic Church. I think it's a worthwhile prayer. It's an earnest prayer, okay? But when you talk about St. Paul moments, again, Jordan Peterson was already, quote unquote, conservative politically, it seems, against this whole this woke culture and everything else. But he's talking about converting to the Catholic Church. Joe, this brings conversions when people like this, because it opens people's eyes. And Shia LaBeouf converting. The key, though, Joe, is, and I'm not saying this about Shia LaBeouf or Jordan Peterson or anybody else, okay? But it can't be a watered down Catholicism. It can't be I'm Catholic, but I don't want to hear I'm Catholic, but okay. And I'll tell you why one of the reasons why Shia LaBeouf needs our prayers. I don't believe he's going to be a Catholic, I'm Catholic, but type of guy. I think he's going to be a Catholic and type of guy. I think when he's questioned in interviews moving forward, people are going to ask him about abortion. People are going to ask him about gay marriage. People are going to ask him about all these things because the enemies of the church are now going to target him. He needs more prayers, Joe, right now than we do. The darts that are going to be pointed at him are going to be fierce because they're going to try to attack him in every way. Now, I think that this guy has some zeal to him. I think he's all in, but he's going to be under tremendous attack. But if he holds firm, and I believe he will, on all the aspects of the church, all the teachings of the church, this guy's going to cause a lot of people to second guess their worldview and convert or revert to the Catholic Church. I do want to mention one thing, Joe. I'm going to hand it over to you because a lot of people feel like when you convert, you're this guy or you're that guy or you're filling this role. You're going to convert the world, Joe. Didn't you know everybody in the world is going to listen to the front line with Joe and Joe, and they're going to convert to the Catholic Church? Doesn't work that way. Okay. I like the fact that his spiritual advisor, he quoted, he gave him a quote from Heraclitus, and I think it's appropriate. And I'd like your comments because we do need a little bit of time because we have to talk about disgraziato Joe Biden. But this was the quote from Heraclitus. Said out of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't even be there. Talking about an army, okay? 10 shouldn't even be there. 80 are just targets. 9 are the real fighters, and we're lucky to have them, for they make the battle. But the one is a warrior, and he will bring the others back. Joe, not everybody's going to be dodging bullets out there at the front line when you're in the breach, when you're in the battle. Okay. Some people are there. They're nervous. They're holding the gun. They don't know how to use it. But it's always, I think, like we talked about St. Paul. In other words, but it's always God will choose somebody to help bring everybody together. And then everybody fights the battle together. Okay. And I'm praying, I read this for a reason. I'm praying a guy like Shia LaBeouf, I'm praying he's that warrior. I really am. I'm praying he's one of those guys that's in the real fight, that he's the warrior, and he helps to bring and strengthen his fellow brothers and sister Catholics to be able to better equipped to fight this battle. Joe, what say you?
Listen, it could be. Like, God's ways are not our ways. I mean, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from this. Giving people a chance, God's mercy, God's personal love, who he chooses, the type of people he chooses. That's why, to be honest with you, we got to look at people with a clean slate, give people a chance, and we have to love them. We have to love people. Think about Barnabas when he was asked to go to St. Paul. He was like, you want me to go to this man? He's a murderer. But he did. He brought him to the apostles. Think about the Franciscans when they were asked to bring this man in, and they could have been like, this guy's just a Hollywood guy. He's using us. I'm not going to do it. They took a chance.
Yeah.
You see, we have to do that. Too many of us, we get in our little camps. We don't give, and I'm not talking about compromise. I'm talking about loving people, and giving people a chance, giving them, to be honest with you, the benefit of the doubt. We have to do that. That's what Jesus did. And you know something? If you're proved wrong 99 times and you're proved right once, you did something.
That's right.
That's another lesson, because those Franciscans did that. They gave him a chance, and it paid dividends in Shiloh's life.
And you got to listen. You got to listen. to how people are talking. Okay, so I think, me personally, it would be real nice if I could say Shia LaBeouf was listening to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Maybe he should, but I will say this. But he got into it with Bishop Barron. He was talking about a bunch of things. Here's one thing I love too. Okay, I love this. He talked about his appreciation for freedom with restraint. Now we know he's now talking as a Catholic. Okay, he says, "quote Freedom doesn't feel good with no structure." Close quote. And the article that by Jessica Kramer in Crisis, she says if there's any demographic that's been ravaged by unfettered freedom, it's the young adult male. And he's learned that freedom with no restraint is slavery. That's why I said he must be watching the Frontline with Joe and Joe. But I'm Joe. This is a powerful message to get out to people of his age and younger, to say, guys, listen. They sold you this bill of goods on freedom, okay? But that's not what they sold you. They sold you slavery. You guys don't know it yet. But by the way, I'm in the Catholic Church now. Guess what? And that's one thing. The church teaches the true definition of freedom. Joe, I want to comment on that, and then we have to move on to Disgracia Joe Biden.
Sadly, a lot of times people have to experience that slavery before they recognize the freedom, but not everyone does. I will say this, though. I think if Catholics witnessed true Catholicism, that freedom in families, in single life, in religious life, if people see it, they'll say to themselves, I'm missing out. That's our job. And I'm going to tell you this right now. If we're not doing that, we're not doing anything. We have to have conversion of heart. People have to see Jesus in you. That is the role of every Catholic, whether you're in the religious life or you're married or you're single. If we do that, the country changes tomorrow.
No, Joe, I agree with you. Joe, can I tell you a quick 1-minute story?
Sure.
Would that be okay? I read an article recently. It talked about the song Only the Good Die Young by Billy Joel, which I don't listen to anymore. Since I became a serious Catholic, I don't listen to that song anymore. I must have listened to it a million times. It is an anti-Catholic song. There's no question about that. Seton Hall University, back when I was at Seton Hall Prep, the Archdiocese of Newark that ran Seton Hall University banned the song from being played on their radio station. But I read an article, and I think this is important, okay? The person writing the article is as opposed to the song as I am. Okay, it is an anti-Catholic screed, and there's no question about it. But he pointed out, Joe, the person in the article, that one of the lines we overlook in that song is where the speaker, in this case Billy Joel, says, talking about the young girl's mother in the song, who's obviously a very staunch Catholic, and the line is, "Did you ever say a prayer for me?" And it struck me, Joe. It really did. You want to know why? I don't like the song. I'm never going to listen to the song again. But isn't that a legitimate question? There are many enemies of the church, Joe. They go back 2,000 years. That's not a shock to anybody. But are we, in fact, praying for those who attack the church? Are we? And or are indifferent to the church, or are hostile to the church, or whatever the case would be. You know what I did after I read that article in that group of people that I pray for when I pray for conversion? I pray for Billy Joel. I pray for his conversion to the Catholic Church. And I think it's important to mention, Joe, we do a lot of complaining around here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. We talk about a lot of people, and rightfully so. I think they deserve it, okay? But in the meantime, we need to ask ourselves a question. All of us out there at the Crusade Channel, us and everybody else, but are we praying for their conversion? Whether it's Billy Joel, whether it's Shia LaBeouf, whether it's Joe Biden, no matter who it is, are we, in fact, praying for their conversion? I think that's something that everybody needs to do every time they pick up a rosary. Pray for the conversion of all people, particularly those who need it most.
Love it.
That's what I think. So talk about the need for conversion. And now you can hear the voices out there, Joe Resinello, on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online. We're at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. You can hear the voices out there. You, Joe and Joe, you're so judgmental. What do you mean you pray for the conversion of Joe Biden? He's already Catholic. He's a better Catholic than you. Yeah, you hear the voices out there say, criticizing us for being judgmental. Joe Biden is in tremendous need of prayers. Okay, but let me say this. Okay, he went to Philadelphia last week, okay, to deliver a speech. Joe, I couldn't do it, Joe. I'm not going to lie to you. I couldn't watch the speech, okay? Part of it was when I saw the thumbnail for it, okay, with the red background and the Marines. I'm like, what is this? Something out of mid-20th century propaganda from the Nazis or the Stalinists or whoever? I couldn't believe what I was seeing, okay? And what he, in fact, did, now this I do know, he declared war on half the country. And I'm going to hand it over to you.
Why don't we play the clip? John, we got.
The nation is still reacting to President Joe Biden's primetime speech. Some say he's sounding an alarm about extremism, while others find it divisive. Bradley Blackburn has more.
But as I stand here tonight, equality and democracy are under assault.
Against the backdrop of Philadelphia's Independence Hall, President Biden addressed Americans to warn about what he considers a threat to the soul of the nation.
MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence.
In his primetime address, the president called out former President Trump and fervent Make America Great Again supporters, while saying he wanted to be clear that mainstream Republicans do not embrace extreme ideology.
MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election.
President Biden said efforts are underway across the country to undermine future elections at the state level. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy delivered a preemptive rebuttal from Scranton, Pennsylvania, where Mr. Biden was born.
Joe Biden is right. Democracy is on the ballot in November. And Joe Biden and the radical left in Washington are dismantling Americans' democracy before our very eyes.
A new
Now, Joe, you understand just from that clip why I could not watch that speech. He's a son of a bitch liar. I'm sorry. I hate his puppet masters. I don't hate him, and I pray for him. But I hate his puppet masters. Joe, who doesn't accept the results of an election? That's all we saw under Trump for 4. Now, this is an example. For 4 years, it's all we heard was he's not legit, he's not legit, he's not legit. Talking about Trump. Everything is projection with them. We want to go back to being able to marry who you want and women's right to choose, all this nonsense. Joe, I can't even talk about it. The veins popping out of my head. I got to hand it over to you because I'm going to have a nervous breakdown.
Couple themes I want to touch on. I've given this some thought. First, pure political theater. And second, focus, focus, focus. Why do I say pure political theater? Joe Biden's backers know that Democrats, forget about Republicans, Democrats are feeling the burn from real issues. What are those real issues? Inflation, gas and groceries, open borders in states like Arizona and Texas, particularly, and crime in big cities. These are apolitical issues. Pure distraction from what's going on. That's number one. 2, we must unify the base. This was pure theatrics. And I say this to all people, ignore it and focus on the 3 big issues. Inflation, your gas and your grocery prices are off the charts, and it's because of his energy policy. Open borders. The very safe cities that say that they're for immigrants don't even want them. Why? Because they're letting them in for political gain in Arizona and Texas, and they care nothing about these people. And lastly, crime, because of the debudgeting of police forces across America. Focus on the issues and ignore the theatrics. That is how I look at this. It's pure strategy, and they want to rev up their base because they're going to need every vote, and they know they don't have it. And I'm talking about Democrats, Joe. Not all Democrats are going to go out and vote for these people because they're getting bulldozed.
Well, that's the thing, and everybody out there has got to start, talking about it the way it is. Got to confront. See, it's hard to say confront Biden. He's a lost soul, and he's lost his mind. Okay, so yeah, what we're confronting here is his puppet masters. Biden's a puppet. He won't be running in 2024. Okay, heaven help us, Joe. The talk is that Hillary's actually thinking it might not be too late for her. I mean, I don't even want to go there. Okay, but his handlers, his puppet masters need to be confronted. We need to scream it from the rooftops. Okay, nobody took away anyone's right to do anything. Okay. And we know that Supreme Court basically just turned over abortion to the states. The Supreme Court didn't say yay or nay. The Supreme Court just basically said that's a state's issue. But let's leave that aside. One thing we have to confront is this. Right now, Donald Trump is the Republican Party. There's no question about it. So this guy, Joe Biden, so he's trying to differentiate between good Republicans, I guess like Jeff Flake and people like that, people I wouldn't vote for on my worst day. Okay. And MAGA extremists who are presumably guilty of what amounts to treason. Okay. But here's the thing. All of this falls flat when you consider that the overwhelming majority of Republicans, not to mention 74 million people who voted for Trump in 2020, still support him. And the polls show that and are still going to vote for him over Biden. Now, here's my thing, Joe. In your lifetime, whether you want to talk about Jimmy Carter. Let's see, who are the presidents in our lifetimes that we would recognize, okay? As we were growing up. Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, Papa Bush, Clinton, W, okay? Obama, Barry Obama, okay? Now, they've attacked the other side. They have attacked the other party. They've attacked certain institutions, the media, okay, and people like that, okay? Joe, did you ever hear anyone who's the president attack 75 million actual Americans? Attack them and call them, what did he call them? He called them, he called them extremists. He called them semi-fascists. I've never heard anybody do that. And it tells you something about where this party's going, Joe. They're punching people in the face now.
It's an act of desperation, Joe, because they know they're in trouble. Like I said, I just take it. I don't 100% agree. No president. It was a horrendous speech. It goes against the whole idea he's a unifier, blah, blah, blah. That was a lie, too. It was, to be truthful with you, all of it, though, was staged. I'll tell you another thing that was staged. The tuition lie. That's not happening.
What did he say? What did he say?
Well, no, but why did that come out in August? He's trying to get young Democrats, 18 to 35, to come out and vote. All it is a lie. All it is you're getting played by them again, and the media is helping them play you. Focus on the issues. I am not a Republican. I focus on issues and I vote accordingly. I am a Catholic nationalist. That's what I am. Well, I am a Catholic nationalist. I do not care what the Republican Party says, nor do I care what the Democratic Party says. I look at issues, and if you look at the issues by the numbers, there is no way you could support this party, because they're crushing the middle class, the working class, and the working poor. If you're rich and you can afford $6 a gallon for gas, good for you. But most people can't. If you're rich and you can afford a $50 bump a week in your grocery bill, good for you. You want to call the genders, have 65 genders, and you can afford to do that. But most people can't. Ignore the nonsense. Here's another thing. They're poking you, and they want violence. They want you to respond. Don't respond in kind. Ignore them, focus on the issues, and vote them out.
I'm glad you said that.
If we do that, they're gone, and they know it.
I'm glad you said that about violence, Joe. The only conclusion one can come to as far as the handlers, Joe Biden's puppet masters and his handlers, okay, the only conclusion you could come to is they're trying to cheese people off. They're trying to anger Republicans. They're trying to anger conservatives by calling them enemies, by calling them semi-fascists, in order to provoke a violent response to which they could say, aha, aha, you see? Look how violent they are. Just like they're trying to do with this concocted narrative about January 6th. And you could do that when you have a willing media. And that's what it always comes down to. They get away with murder because of the media. And I'm not even joking. All right. I mean, serious, like dead bodies they've gotten away with over the course of the last 25, 30 years because the media will never question somebody who votes the right way. But here's the thing. Jonathan Tobin, I believe it was the Federalist, he basically echoes, Joe, what you were saying. Faced with a losing hand, and losing meaning in the midterm elections, Biden's doing the only thing that might avert catastrophe. He's diverting people's attention from his own ineptitude, his own misrule, his own mismanagement. Even if you want to give him enough credit to say it's his, but it's not. It's his puppet masters, okay? They're the ones who are jacking up prices. They're the ones that are causing inflation. They're the ones who are causing all the problems. And then they sit there and go, but come to us because we're gonna straighten it all out. Straighten out what? You're the one who your actions have jacked up the price of gas. Your actions have jacked up inflation. Everything you've done. And what does he do? Gets up there and says, if you disagree with me and you even think about voting for that other party who are a bunch of MAGA extremists, okay, you're a semi-fascist and you're an enemy of the state. I mean, I don't see that for a second as being a winning strategy. But then again, I didn't go to the Ivy League like Biden's puppet masters. Okay. They claim to be the smart ones. I think it's a loser for them. I think it's
very well could be. I mean, I think they're desperate, Joe, and they need Democrats. I heard a statistic about 6 months ago that 7% of Democrats are not going to vote for the Biden administration. Dude, they need every vote they can get. They need independent votes. They've lost them too. Joe, this was a pure act of desperation, if you ask me. So was the lie that they're going to give money because it's unconstitutional. They can't do it. Even Nancy Pelosi said that. It has to go through the Congress. That is a complete and utter
And that's
lie.
a loser. That's a
Absolutely.
loser.
That's another twist, but they're just using that as the carrot. But here's another point that I want to bring out with Joe Biden. And Mike Church says this. Mike Knowles says this. People who are paying attention say this. And I'm saying it because I pay attention too. Everything they say is projection. Joe, they tip their hand. Every time I listen to them, I just laugh to myself. It's pure projection. They say exactly what they're doing. They tell you what they're doing. That's another thing I want to say. And then one more thing I want to say. And this is, I'm going to use this. This is Mike Knowles. I'm just going to, every time they use the term, they're threatening democracy, replace that with liberalism, with progressivism. No, that's not, I'm not threatening democracy. Democracy has different views. That has nothing to, that's actually what healthy democracy is. It's just replace that word with liberalism or progressivism. They're threatening, these ideas are threatening your ideas, and they can't hold the water. They can't hold it up.
Right.
And that's what it is. People have to, it's like going to a corporate meeting. They never tell you what they're going to do. You have to read between the lines. You have to listen carefully. And basically, this is pure theater. They're desperate. They're about to get crushed, particularly in the House. And I actually think they're going to lose in the Senate too. Not by a lot, but I do think they're going to lose the Senate as well. And then they're really going to ratchet it up. Because I'm going to tell you this, Joe Pasillo, they're not going to give up. They're not like the Republicans who do give up, because every power source in America is run by progressive liberals, and that's who pays their bills, and that's why they don't fight for people. And that's why I'm not a Republican. But they will not give up. And I'll tell you this, my friends, if Joe Biden loses in 2024, what you saw on January 6th is going to be a frat party. And they will not even excuse the behavior. They'll justify it. They'll justify it completely.
Didn't they do that? Let's answer a couple of talking points, Joe, here. We only have a couple minutes left at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. Blue politicians in Congress not only tried to block the certification of Trump's election and every GOP election this century, something they land-based Republicans are doing. Here's another thing. When you hear the left say, quote, you can't love your country only when you win. Right. See Roe versus Wade. You lost that battle. After a 50-year struggle, you lost that battle, okay? But now you don't love your country because Democrats want to abandon the 4th of July, or did, okay? Here's another one, Joe. Quote, there's no place for violence in America, period, none, ever, close quote. What about Antifa? What about Black Lives Matter? It goes back to what you said. They'll justify that. Again, Joe, you know the underlying, I'm going to give this to you for your final thoughts. Underlying everything we're saying about this Biden speech, everything, because normal, sane people, regardless of party, will look at Joe Biden and say, you're full of crap. What are you talking about? Your party's done all of this stuff. Everything that you're doing, that you're accusing the other side of, you've done it all. Illegitimate election of Donald Trump, violence you've justified from BLM and Antifa, all of it, threats to democracy. You don't believe in the Constitution, okay? They can't do anything, Joe Resinello. They can't do a damn thing without the media, and they know it. If there's the biggest thing that a new Congress, let's say, can do, they're going to have to get serious about the media. I'm going to leave that over to you, Joe. We have a couple minutes left.
I agree with you 100%. There's people in the chat room who are basically saying, turn off the news. We've said this time and time again. The news, they're not on the people's side. They're just not. I mean, conservative news stinks too. You have to really dig to find the facts. It's just the way it is. But I'll tell you what needs to be done, if you ask me, and it's beginning. When you slander someone, you have to sue them. We're seeing that with Alec Baldwin. Someone's suing him for $25 million because he said something on Twitter. When you say things that have no basis in truth, that you call people things, you have to sue. And I'm not talking for $10 or $10,000 or $100,000. You sue the pants off them. And when it hits their bottom line, they will stop it. And also ignore them. I look at the news like they're the National Enquirer. Disregard them. When you want to behave like adults, I'll invite you back in the room. Until then, you're not invited. You have no credibility. Zero. They've been outed. It's a joke. And if you think otherwise, I'm sorry, you've drank the Kool-Aid. You're not paying attention.
No, that's right. And we all need to pay attention. Hey, listen, you want a news source? How about the Crusade Channel? How about you go down to crusadechannel.com, open the hood, kick the tires, take a test drive. You're going to love it. Mike Church, Barrett, Joe and Joe. Great lineup down there. Obviously, Joe and I are on our social media where you can find us, YouTube, Facebook, all over the place. And wherever you see us, please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. But yeah, Joe, if you want, look, there's plenty of media out there that are people who are telling the truth, who are shedding the light of truth on all these things. We need to find them. We would encourage all of you out there to find them. They're out there abandoned. Listen, people out there say, we got to stop watching CNN. Stop watching Fox. Don't worry about CNN. Their ratings are in the crapper. All right. Stop watching Fox News. I would say stop watching Newsmax. Okay. There's plenty of other outlets out there for you to get news. We would encourage you to do so. We want to thank you all out there for joining us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. We went way in the breach tonight on the Crusade Channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com. The chat room at the Crusade Channel, crusadechannel.com/chat is always open. Help us out wherever you can. We would ask you primarily where you see Joe and I on social media. Like, subscribe, share, do all of that fun stuff. Of course, if you like what we do. So thanks once again. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation. And that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon. You have to go. So we want to thank everybody for joining us at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello on the Crusade channel. And wherever you see Joe and I on social media, please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Help us out if you can. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.